Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blind Eye Live. I am your host, Hunter King, Blind Eye himself, owner and proprietor of Blind Eye Media, and it is a glorious Friday morning. I am sorry for not streaming after Beast Feast last night. I ended up not getting home till like 11:45. I was wiped. A lot of us were just wiped out, tired after Beast Feast last night, which was a resoundingly great time. Really had a good time. My voice is still probably recovering a little bit right now. But we had a great time. I feel like the band played really well. Put on it, or we did our job. Got to meet and listen to Chester Moore, who is a outdoorsman, and just meeting him once, great dude. Really excited to meet him and find out we have a common love of pro wrestling. So that's really cool. Excited to get to chat with him again. And he had an awesome testimony. That was a blessing to listen to. Jace and Missy Robertson spoke, and Jace gave a great presentation, the gospel message. Got to meet them briefly beforehand. That was really cool. Sorry, my cat has decided to say hello this morning. Hey, Willard. But anyway, it was a great time last night. And then we were tired and hungry afterward because a lot of us who were in the band chose not to stuff our face full of crawfish before performing. Although people got to take some home with them afterward. There was that much crawfish. It was insane. But so a bunch of us just happened to all have the same idea, independent of each other, to go to IHOP. So I didn't get home till near midnight. But man, was the first round crazy. And we are going to get into that real soon. I'm going to start off with just a quick note. Dallas eliminated Utah from the NBA playoffs. Luka Doncic finally advances past the first round. We say finally. It's year 4 for Luka. I mean, he's a young star. The fact he's been in the playoffs or he's already a staple in the playoffs is really impressive. And that Dallas team's impressive. Jalen Brunson was one of my favorite college basketball players I've ever seen when he was at Villanova. And he was not the highest, he was not the highest upside guy. He was, well, really, for most people, he was like on those Villanova teams that were so good for back-to-back years. I mean, Villanova's been good for a long time, but I mean, specifically that kind of group of players. I mean, of course, Michael Bridges was everyone's like number one, but most people had Josh Hart ahead of Jalen Brunson. I know he was drafted higher. Amari Spellman, Eric Paschall. Most people, or a lot of people, had them rated higher as prospects than Jalen Brunson. And all Brunson has done is gone on to be freaking awesome. I mean, Bridges is definitely still better, but that's it. Brunson has been awesome, and it doesn't shock me. Scrappy, hard-nosed player. My comp for him coming out of Villanova was another former Villanova player, Kyle Lowry. Are they exactly the same? No, but they're similar builds. They have the same toughness, basketball IQ. Just great teammates and great team players. Hard work ethic. I felt like Jalen Brunson was a can't-miss role player at minimum. And look at him now. So, Dallas moves on. And Utah's got to think about some things because the Mitchell Gobert dynamic it seems like it's not working. Maybe it's the stuff around them, but I really don't think so. Gobert's limited offensive ability just does not. It hurts them come playoff time. And his defensive strengths get exploited in the postseason because of how Utah builds its scheme for his strengths. And they still have not figured out a way to counter the weaknesses. If you're going to have him play drop coverage all the time, if you're going to have him, clutter the paint, teams have realized we can 5 out these guys. It's how the Clippers beat them last year. It's how Houston has dismantled them in the playoffs during the Morey Harden era. And that's how Dallas beat Utah. Maxi Kleber is the exact kind of big that you destroy Utah's defensive scheme with. Kleber is one of the most undervalued players in the league. I actually think he's on a pretty decent contract, but I would say he's one of these players in the league. Most people would consider him a rotation player or whatever, not truly a starting level player. He is. He plays really great defense and can play in any type of scheme. He's not the best switching switch defender as a big, but he can handle it. He can play drop coverage. He can play aggressive. He can play power forward or center. And, he moves his feet really well. He's a solid rim protector, either rotating from the weak side or as your main big. And on offense, he can do anything you want. He can roll to the rim. He can make plays out of the short roll. And he's great popping out of the pick and roll. And he's a great floor spacer. Off the ball. Kleber's really, really good. He's one of those kind of those role player type guys that is a championship caliber player. And he's the kind of guy, he's one of those kinds of guys that you need. He's one of those archetypes that really helps you win championships. He is a winner player. So, congratulations to Dallas moving on to the second round. And if I'm not mistaken, have fun dealing with Phoenix. Although, that depends on Booker's health. Dallas is going to be dangerous in that series. If Booker's not able to play early in the series. They're going to be dangerous anyway. They've got one of the best players in the NBA. One of the best young players. Luka's one of the craziest talents I've ever seen. So, moving on from NBA stuff, let's get into what you're really here for if you're on my channel probably. We got through maybe the craziest first round in draft history, and I missed it all. Cat. So my cat has decided that my cajon and my cajon case, or my cajon and its cajon case, is his favorite bed. I have this really nice big bed for him. He doesn't use it, but he loves my cajon case. I think he actually likes sleeping on harder surfaces. I don't know, but he's cleaning himself over there, and sometimes he'll his claws will grip into the top of the case. I need to buy a new case anyway, but I'm just always afraid he's going to tear it up. Even though he's not actually really gripping and pulling into it. So, if you hear me turn, or you see me turn, it's because I'm worried. But anyway, we're going to get into recapping the first round. So let me pull up. Sorry, my keyboard is literally right there with my mic, so. Oh, come on. Why would the New York Times be the first thing that comes up in my Google search for that? Okay. And then. Cat, I'm busy. Sorry, I'm pulling up. So what I'm doing right now is I'm pulling up the picks in general, and then I've got the Cat, if you bite me, I'm gonna be very upset. Well, if I can, I think this is it. Okay. Yep, got it. I was reading this article on my iPad earlier that I'm pulling up here, so please don't hate me. Okay, so we're going to get into this. You know what? I'm gonna minimize myself, and I'm gonna give y'all. Y'all are gonna have. For anyone tuning in for the first time, you're gonna see how blind I am. Like already, I look blind enough, but this is a 43-inch TV, 4K TV. I'm sitting this close. All right, let me put screen share. Boom. All right, so we're gonna go through this real quick, or as quickly as I possibly can, because y'all know I'm long-winded. All right, so my mock draft started off 2 for 2. Trayvon Walker went number 1. Trent Balk just could not pass up on the upside. And, I mean, I get it. Walker, 6'5", 272. Insane combine numbers. Incredible versatility. Because of his skill set, he could play an Eric Armstead type role where he plays Eric Armstead for the Niners. Armstead has enough athleticism and is powerful and quick. Is super powerful and he's quick enough that he can play the edge, particularly like on the first couple downs. Not necessarily on third down ideal, but he could play outside as kind of like the strong man in a 4-3 or in the Seattle Seahawks and the Gus Bradley scheme and schemes like that like running like really 5-man fronts, but not necessarily a 3-4 front. It's kind of like a 4-3 front, but with a kind of a nose tackle, a 3 technique, but then having kind of like a not really a 5 technique defensive end, but kind of a, because your usual defensive ends like in a 4-3, like the standard would be a 7 alignment, at least on the side with like the bigger tackle. He could play that kind of role, kind of like the Michael Bennett role in Seattle is kind of what I'm talking about for Trayvon Walker, where you play that 4-3 D end role, and then on passing downs, like in nickel packages, you slide into defensive tackle. Walker can do that. Walker can also play like a 3-4 outside linebacker, or like your more speed rushing, or like a wide 9 set defensive end. He has coverage chops. Actually, he's one of the best players I've seen in underneath coverage at that size ever. and since I've started doing more hardcore scouting type, or really getting into the weeds and learning about scouting and how to do that at a professional level, like what scouts are looking for technique and stuff. Walker's really good at that, and he's got insane upside. Yes, he only had like 9.5 sacks in his college career. I think he only had 3.5 last season, but that wasn't necessarily his role in Georgia's defense. He was a multi-gap run defender, and they really had Devonta White as more of their tear-loose defensive lineman, because he really played more of a 5-technique role at Georgia. 5-technique defensive end lined up on the inside shoulder of the tackle, of the offensive tackle, in that gap between the tackle and the guard. And he was more of a kind of read, react, run defender most of the time. And they had a lot of blitz packages with their linebackers. And Devonta White was on the other side, who, to be completely honest, I knew he was going to go in the back end of the first round, but he was one of my top, I think he was prospect number 14 for me. Like, I thought he was a top 15 player. I thought Devonta White, his grade, along with everyone else, like, if a team drafted him in the top 10, I wouldn't bat an eye. White's extremely productive. He's one of the greatest athletes at over 300 pounds the draft has seen. I mean, we're talking Quinnen Williams level athleticism here. Actually, it may be a little more athletic than Williams, especially his straight line burst. But for Wyatt, but Walker, I had to take in Hutchinson or Evan Neal. Well, before they signed Cam Robinson to that insane 3-year, $54 million contract. Also, I'm going to do a better job today of keeping up with chat. So, I'm going to pop out of my article every so often. So, Walker goes number 1. From an upside standpoint, this is a great pick. And I think Walker's going to pan out. People talked about, like, Kayvon Thibodeaux in the lead-up, like, people talking about Walker. It's like, wasn't this kind of what they did with Kayvon Thibodeaux? Like, he didn't have amazing production until his last year, and it still wasn't, like, this great season. It was really, like, the last, like, 3-4 games he did pretty well. And I think for Chason had a pass rushing role and was raw in that role because he just had not developed. Like, I think Walker, a lot of it had to do with opportunity. And they moved him around. Like, there were some times where, like, Walker was even playing nose for them. Because in certain matchups, they'd have him play nose. So Jalen Carter, when he was on the field. Because here's the thing. Jordan Davis last year only played 38% of Georgia's snaps during the season. And they have this guy who wasn't even eligible for this year's draft, Jalen Carter, who is the consensus best player from Georgia's defense this past year. So let that sink in, because Georgia had 5 first-round defenders last night. 5. Which is a NFL draft record. Not 5 players, 5 defensive players. Matt Miller of NFL, of the ESPN, his NFL comp for Walker is Kwity Paye. And that's an interesting comp, but I would actually compare Walker more, because, like, he's bigger than Paye. Definitely taller and longer. If I had a comp for Walker, it would be like a supercharged Michael Bennett, or because to me, he's way more explosive than Paye. I'd argue he has a lot in common with Rashawn Gary, but because they're similar size. Not the exact same build, though. But it's hard for me to find a comp for Walker, to be completely honest. Number 2, man, the Lions, and they did exactly that. They sprinted for Aiden Hutchinson. This is, to me, the best fit, period. Just from everything. Like, he's a Michigan kid going to the Lions who need an impact pass rusher day one. Like, Walker's going to need time. But the good thing for the Jaguars is, which they have Josh Allen, a established number 1. Walker's going to help their defense in so many levels. Like, he's going to help their run defense right away, which the Jags need that bad. But Hutchinson's going to come in, and he'll help the Lions run defense too. But I love the comp that Miller has for Hutchinson. It's Jared Allen, who at one point was the highest paid defensive player in the history of the NFL. He had an awesome career. He was a dominant pass rusher for about a 5-year stretch. I remember the Titans traded down out of the first round, I think it was, to get picks, and I think it was it the Texans who moved up for Allen? I'm trying to remember who it was, because I think it was us. This has been a long time ago, like I was a kid, but I want to say maybe it wasn't the Texans. I believe we traded down, and someone traded up for Jared Allen, and just. But Allen, he wasn't necessarily the fastest, like, top-end speed guy, but he had a great first step. He had great power and great technique. And I think Hutchinson has, in my opinion, I think he's a better prospect than Allen. My comp for him throughout this draft process has been a hybrid of Joey and Nick Bosa. So the Lions nailed that pick. He's going to play. He's a 4-3 end for sure. I don't think he has the ability to play in a 3-4, and that's fine. The Lions run a 4-3, and he's going to immediately improve their pass rush. Here's where my mock went off the rails, or started to go off the rails, which is not a shock, to be frank, because I figured the third pick was going to be, or was difficult to project. So Houston drafts Derek Stingley Jr. So he ends up being the first corner drafted, just like everyone expected when the year started. And he was people's number 3 prospect for a long time. And he's a great fit for Houston. They needed a top end corner, and they got him. He's 6 foot 190. He's one of the most fluid corners I've ever seen on tape. His 2019 tape as a true freshman may be the greatest true freshman season a defensive player has had in my lifetime. He should have won the Thorpe Award that year. He was the best defensive player in college football that year. And Matt Miller's comp for him is Marcus Lattimore out of New Orleans. That's not a bad one. He's definitely better than Lattimore. But kind of thinking of the comp here. He's Lattimore if he didn't get burned as much. And that's not a dig on Lattimore, really. Like, every corner is going to get beat occasionally, especially if they're covering number 1 receivers in the NFL. I mean, it's just going to happen, especially as young corners. But Stingley's awesome. To be completely honest, though, the only reason I would hesitate to compare him to former LSU star Patrick Peterson, who's had an awesome career, is Peterson's a little bit bigger built. Like, but other than the Peterson having a few pounds on him, and I think maybe being an inch taller, everything else about him super similar. They were two-way players. Like, Peterson was also a great running back in high school. And Peterson got on the field sometimes on offense and as a returner. Stingley, as a freshman, had some punt return duties and was great at it. They're both amazing ball hogs. Actually, that probably would still be my comp for Stingley. Because Stingley was a two-way guy. He really wanted to play running back some in college. He wanted to be a two-way guy. That didn't really happen because of health and stuff, but... But to me, Stingley and Patrick Peterson would be more the comp for me. But, I mean, when you're being comped to a multiple-time Pro Bowler like Marshawn Lattimore coming out, that's pretty dang good. Big fan of... I like that pick for Houston. And I've been hearing a lot of buzz that Stingley was really high on their board. So, and I should have listened to that when I was doing my mock. Then the Jets go with Ahmed Gardner at 10. So to be fair, I did have the Jets drafting a corner, but it was Stingley at 10. I love the Gardner pick for him, though. Once again, especially with Miami loading up at receiver, the Bills having what they have on offense, you need to be able to cover, and you need to be able to try and slow these guys down. Well, you're going to be able to slow someone down because Gardner is one of the best press cover corners I've ever evaluated. He's extremely talented, extremely big, and he's got really good speed. A 4.41 40 at 6'3", 190 is really freaking good. And Matt Miller's comp for him is Richard Sherman, and I agree with that. Except he's Richard Sherman with, borderline track speed. Because Sherman ran in, I think the mid 4.5s in the 40. But Gardner's got incredible height and length and size, and he's pretty fluid too, but he's going to own the line of scrimmage. He's going to own receivers and press. And that'll help the Jets pass rush, just having someone who will give them more time. Maybe, or maybe half a second more time on most downs, or, most plays. Then the Giants go with Kayvon Thibodeaux. And, of course, I had them going offensive tackle at 5. They end up going offensive tackle at 7. And I had them going pass rusher at 7. And it wasn't Thibodeaux. But Thibodeaux is extremely physically gifted. I was wary of his 3-cone drill, but I've read enough that some people believe he was just kind of, going through the motions during the draft process, which, that's cool, but I think he cost himself, money in this process. I like Miller's comp. Danielle Hunter's not bad for a comp. I don't think he's as twitched up as Hunter. He's twitchy and strong, but I don't think he's not as explosive as Hunter, and he's not as flexible as Hunter. Really, my comp for... Hunter's not a bad comp, but to me, he just was a higher profile player than Hunter was. If I was actually going to compare Thibodeaux to someone, it would probably be more like Robert Quinn, which is not a bad comp either. Quinn's just not as fluid as Hunter. And Quinn got drafted higher than Hunter, but Quinn was really twitched up. So Giants got their pass rusher, and they needed one. They needed a number 1 edge rusher. Azeez Ojulari could be a number 1. He was really good in year 1 for them as a second-round pick. Ojulari was a first-round guy for me last year. And they got him at, pick 50 or something. Well, They got him in the second round. I know that for sure. Which was just, to me, was really great value. But now you've got Thibodeaux and Ojulari. And Ojulari is a pure speed finesse rusher, whereas Thibodeaux is going to have a little more physicality to his rush style. So there is some difference there. The Panthers went offensive tackle, so I got the position right at 6, but actually, you know what? This was actually a pick I got right. This was a pick I got right. Because I did have Ekwonu going 6 yesterday. That's right. Because I had Neal going 3 and I had Cross going 5. So I got 3 of the first 6 picks correct. So that's pretty good. I love Ekwonu going to the Panthers. Their offensive scheme, he can play tackle in. If they don't feel comfortable starting him off at tackle and they want to start him off at guard, he'll slot in at left guard and he'll be one of the best left guards, or he'll just be one of the best guards in the league. If they believe in Brady Christensen, who they drafted in the 3rd round last year, if they believe he has the ability to start at tackle this year. But otherwise, Ekwonu's awesome. I hate Miller's comp for him. He is not Tristan Wirfs. They are not the same guy. Now, physicality speaking, sure. Wirfs is a better athlete. Wirfs is so much better in pass protection. His technique's amazing. Wirfs was my favorite tackle prospect in the 2020 draft. I thought Wirfs was a stud. I didn't think he was above most of the other guys on everyone else's boards, but he was my number 1. He was my favorite guy. That's not who Ekwonu is. Ekwonu is a beast of a run blocker, and that they have in common. But I would argue Ekwonu, it's hard for me to really find a comp for him, because to me, most of his comps are guards. Like, I would call him a twitchier Quentin Nelson. But I don't think he's necessarily as technically proficient as a blocker as Nelson, but he's so nasty and beastly in the run game. But I guess that's how I look at Ekwonu. He's Nelson, but as a tackle. I think is the best way to put it. And that doesn't mean he can't play tackle, because I think he'll develop just fine. He's got to clean up his pass sets, but... and then, so the Giants, which all the talk had been how high they were on Cross coming in, I don't think the Giants believed they were going to have a shot at Evan Neal. And they decided pass rusher was more important at 5, even though Neal was on the board. Well, they had all 3 offensive tackles were still on the board. I think they were comfortable with multiple guys, so... they decided to let that position come to them, and they got my number 1 overall prospect at 7. Neal is big, strong. You're talking about a guy, he's listed at 6'8". I thought he was some people call him 6'6". I thought he was 6'7", 337. If he's 6'8", 337, God. And I like the comp here. Jordan Mailata, or... Oh, yeah, the I's before the L. So it's Jordan Mailata, or is it Jordan Mailata? Anyway, he's the starting left tackle for the Eagles. They drafted him in the 6th or 7th round, I think. Or he was a late round pick by the Eagles several years ago, and they developed him. He's been starting at left tackle. He's so good that 2019 first round pick Andre Dillard hadn't been able to get the starting left tackle job. And Mailata is really big. So's Neal, and he's a great athlete. So's Neal. And I'd argue he's a higher upside version of Mailata, who was a high upside but really raw guy. Evan Neal's way closer to his ceiling than Mailata was, and he's younger than he was by the time he got to that level. Like Neal, I think is going to come in. He's going to start, and he's played left guard, right tackle, and left tackle at Bama. He started off at left guard. He played right tackle last year, and he played left tackle this year. He's going to slide in at right tackle, and the Giants are going to have the best young tackle tandem in the league in Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal. And this is exactly what the Giants needed. To see if Daniel Jones, the Giants have declined his fifth-year option, and rightfully so, but Jones is going to have the ability, especially if they don't trade Kadarius Toney, they're going to know whether he's going to sink or swim this year. So, and that allows Matt Peart, a former third-round pick of theirs, I think in 2020? I think. If it wasn't 2020, it was 2021. But that allows Matt Peart to slide to a swing tackle role. Or, if the Giants like Peart, Neal can play at guard. Or maybe Peart can scoot into guard. But the Giants' offensive line is really good now. Sorry, let me check the chat. All right, cool. Then the Falcons, this one surprised me because I really thought Garrett Wilson would be the first receiver chosen. But Arthur Smith decided to go with the big-bodied Drake London. Drake London, sky's the limit. Like, he could be Mike Evans. He could be Vincent Jackson. There's part of me that's worried. I don't think he's going to bust, but I wonder if he's going to end up more like... I'm trying to think of a big-bodied guy who's good, but he's not like elite, which is what you're hoping for out of the number 8 pick. You're hoping for great to elite. And like, is London just going to be, which, I mean, Michael Pittman Jr. is going into what, year 3 right now? But is he Michael Pittman Jr.? Which, I mean, once again, if Pittman jumps this year with Matt Ryan at quarterback, you know, I'm probably gonna be like, well, that was dumb of me. But I'm trying to think here. Big-bodied was like solid but not amazing. I'll come back to it. I don't need to like just freeze up that much time. But London has a lot of upside. Like I said, he could be Mike Evans. Like, he's 6'5". You can see his basketball background. He's got really quick feet underneath. So he came in at 6'4", 219. I think it was like 6'4.5". And his comp, Matt Miller's comp, is Mike Evans. I love it. And I actually think he's a better route runner, and he's better in short areas than Mike Evans. I'll say that. And underneath. Although Mike Evans is better than that. And they're both really physical after the catch. They've got a little more wiggle than you expect, but their basketball background shows up in the way they play at the catch point. And if London was playing with a quarterback like Matt Ryan, I might like this a little better. I don't know if Mariota's going to be able to get the best out of him in year 1. Because one of the best things you could do with London is having back shoulder timing. Because I think London will struggle against top corners. Could struggle to some degree because he doesn't necessarily have elite long speed, and I don't think he's going to threaten a lot of the of NFL corners over the top, so they're not going to give him a ton of cushion. And they're going to be ready to break on the ball at any moment. So you've got to put that ball in the right place so London can box out. We'll see, though. Then Seattle, just, in my opinion, dream scenario, you get Charles Cross. You get one of the elite tackles at 9. And Cross is the best pass protector in this draft. I really like the Teron Armstead comp for Cross. Cross is an awesome athlete. Really quick, agile. He's got really good foot speed. .6'6", 307. And Cross, like, he was only a sophomore redshirt this year. When he came into college, he was only 260. So in 3 years, he's put on 47 pounds of really good muscle. And he's still getting stronger. He wasn't asked to run block a whole lot at Mississippi State. So there are some concerns. I don't have those concerns. Like, he looked fine on his run blocking tape. And when he was on the move, like, there were some run plays where he was on the move or, like, on screens. He's nasty. Like, he'll bury people. He'll level people. I'm not worried about that at all. But I love his feel at the position. Speed rusher, power rusher, it doesn't matter. Cross knows what to do. His mirroring ability is as good as any, as good as any tackle prospect I've seen, regardless of experience level in college. So for him to do that with basically 2 years of college experience, really impressive. And he's a smooth technician. If anything, like, his NFL comp is not Teron Armstead when he was coming out. He's Teron Armstead, like, in pass pro, like, veteran Teron Armstead. Which I know that, like, that's high praise. That's the way I see it. Another comp I have for him, just as a pass protector, is Jason Peters. So I was really high on Cross. I didn't even look at. Oh yeah, Neil's comp was Jordan Mailata, which was good. I was gonna say Neil is like. He's like 90% of the way to Jonathan Ogden. Was another one I had for him. Okay, moving to 10. So, Garrett Wilson to the Jets at 10. And I'm just going to say this right now. The Jets are big winners from day one. So, Wilson, 6 foot, 183. I love that Robert Woods comp, actually. That's actually a really good comp. Which is very similar to Wilson. He has really good athletic testing numbers, but he's so smooth on the field, it feels like for some people he doesn't necessarily use them all the time. But I'm personally a big fan of... Well, I'm a big fan of Wilson's game. I'm a huge fan of Robert Woods' game. I love having him in Tennessee. I was looking really forward to him pairing with A.J. Brown, though. We'll get to that in a minute. But Wilson's super smooth, has really, really good hands. He's just a really safe pick. And he's going to give the Jets' receiver room right now is young and talented. You've got Wilson to be your X receiver. Or really, actually, Davis probably plays in the X role just because, or Corey Davis, because he's physical and he'll be able to beat press. You've got Elijah Moore in the slot and Braxton Berrios to play in the slot. You've got Wilson to play the Z. or X, doesn't matter. He's good at getting off a press because of how smooth he is. Moore can play the Z. You've got, like, you can move a lot of these guys around anywhere. Then you've still got Denzel Mims, who's going into his third year after being a second-round pick. He's really raw, physically talented guy. I mean, and they brought in C.J. Uzomah and Tyler Conklin. I believe they're the team that brought in Tyler Conklin, like, at tight end. Zach Wilson's got all kinds of options in the passing game now. Not to mention, you've got Michael Carter, who they drafted in the 4th round last year. Tevin Coleman's back. Coleman's always been a really good pass-catching back, who's also been able to kind of play in the slot. Like, I love the Jets draft, and we'll get to the biggest reason, really, in my opinion, why I love it later here in this first round recap. So no trades during the draft in the top 10, although 3 of the picks in the top 10 were acquired by their teams in trades prior to the draft. The Jets and Giants, of course, the Jets had the Seahawks pick because of the Jamal Adams trade. The Giants had the Bears pick because of Justin Fields trade, or trade up last year. And the Seahawks ended up with the Broncos pick at 9 because of the Russell Wilson trade. But then chaos ensued. So there was a talk yesterday, early in the day, that picks 11 through 14 were going to be prime trade-up spots. And that turned out to be extremely true, as 11 through 13 all got moved. So the Saints, they didn't pick him where I had him, but I did have Chris Olave going to the Saints at 16. Or was it 18 or 19? I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly yesterday, I had Olave going to the Saints. So anyway, now there was talk that Washington was interested in Olave in London at 11. Well, obviously, the reports that they were interested in Olave either weren't correct or they didn't realize the Saints were moving up for Olave. But I think Washington was just really in on Drake London. So Saints move up and get Olave. So we're going to go over to the handy trade thing. So these are going to be in order. So I'm going to go scroll up from here. Okay. So the trade that was made, before I get into talking about Olave, the Washington Commanders traded pick number 11 to the Saints for their pick at number 16. And then they also got a 3rd rounder, pick 98, which is a compensatory pick, and a 4th rounder, pick 120. Honestly, for the Saints, they've been so aggressive in the like the trade that got them the 16th pick. I guess why not move up and make sure you get the guy that you really want? Honestly, 3rd and 4th rounders and like a tail end of the 3rd round and a 4th round pick, not the worst. Not terrible value to move up 5 spots this early in the round. But to me, this receiver class is so deep. I don't necessarily love making the move up but I guess it depends on how highly you value a player. And the Saints have been really good, in my opinion, at wide receiver evaluation in the past. Like, let's just list off some guys just all over the draft board. Of course, Michael Thomas, 2nd round back in 2016. Brandon Cooks was a 1st round pick of theirs in, I'm trying to remember which draft. I think it was 2014. Cooks has been awesome. Like, everywhere he's gone. He's only had 1 season where he didn't break 1,000 yards, I think, in his career. Or maybe it was 2. Like, his rookie season, I think maybe he fell short. And even the year he fell short of 1,000, I think he still had 900 and something yards. like Cooks was a great pick. Of course, I mean, and I'm just going over the Mickey Loomis era. They've done really good undrafted or at the very tail end of the draft. Guys like Lance Moore, Marcus Colston, Marquez Callaway was an undrafted free agent who's been really good for them. Traquan Smith was a mid-round pick who's been pretty productive. Deontay Hardy now. He was Deontay Harris. Although he's had some off-the-field issues recently. Trying to think of a couple more guys that I'm blanking on. Robert Meacham was, I guess some people would consider him not necessarily hitting the first round. But they already had Marcus Colston and Lance Moore, and he basically just ended up being their kind of third receiver during that era. I mean, they won a Super Bowl. I believe, yeah, they won a Super Bowl with Robert Meacham on the team, so. And playing a major role, so. Anyway. And they arguably got the most anyone got out of Ted Ginn Jr. when he was there, although they didn't draft him. But Olave, 6 foot, 187. He is really freaking smooth. I like the Terry McLaurin comp, except McLaurin, as a route runner, like, in his movements, he's a little more spastic. I think Bo Melton, who's going to go later in this draft, is more like Terry McLaurin. Olave reminds me a lot of Reggie Wayne. Because Reggie Wayne was, and I think Wayne might have been a little thicker, but Wayne just was super smooth. His route running was was really impressive. And especially deep down the field. His ability to set up corners subtly and create separation on deep routes. Like, Olave has that in spades. And it wouldn't shock me if Olave ended up having a better pro career out of him and Garrett Wilson. Even though I had Wilson graded higher, I just think Wilson has a little more all-around game than Olave. Is all. Then the Lions decided, we need to get this guy. We got to go. We can't wait any longer. And they traded up from 32 for my number one receiver and I have him 6th or 7th ranked overall. Anyway, I had him like 6th, 7th ranked overall. Jameson Williams, who, man, that dude can fly. And this is a fast receiver class. I believe Jameson Williams has 4.2 speed. He shows it on tape. So here's the Lions trade. And I'm going to be honest, I like the Lions trade up better than the Saints. So the Lions had gotten the 32nd pick from the Rams for Matt Stafford. They traded that. They traded their second round pick at number 34 and their third round pick at 66 to the Vikings to move up to 12 to get Williams. And they also got the number 46 pick in the second round. And here's why I like this better than the Saints. The Saints gave up 2 picks, 96 and 120, which 66 is more valuable, obviously. It's earlier, and some people might consider like 66 as valuable as those 2 picks combined. But to move up 20 spots in the first round, and all you gave up was, and you gave up a third round pick, and you moved down like 12 selections in the second round. Even though like that early second round area is one of the, historically is one of the best like draft ranges for value. Because usually what happens is there are teams who either trade into the back in the first round, or they have like their guy that they're just higher on than everyone else that they take. And then guys who are first round talents end up at the beginning of the second round. I love this trade for the Lions, and it's who they're getting. Because Olave, for me, I had Wilson, I had Williams, number one for me at receiver. I had Wilson, I had Christian Watson, who I'm way higher on than everyone else. I had him number 3, and as my he was 14th ranked for me. I think I had like Jordan Davis 12, Wyatt 13, and then Watson 14. And then my next receiver off the board, my number 4 was Olave. So the Lions move up, and I think it's a great for the Vikings, who are trying to improve their roster. In my opinion, getting Jermaine Johnson would have been nice here, but obviously they weren't as high on the corners. Like, they weren't as high on Trent McDuffie. So where I had them taking him at 12, they didn't love that value. Especially the way the first round panned out. Moving down to 32 worked out really well for them, in my opinion. And they picked up the 34th pick and the 66th pick. They're going to be able to address pass rusher and corner as they move forward. But for the Lions, I think, considering the amount of draft capital they had, I think this is great value. And, whoops, that's not what I wanted to hit. I don't know why I hit back there. I'm wanting this. Let me pause this. Getting to Williams, though. Let's see what Matt Miller's comp. Odell Beckham Jr. That's a crazy comp. That's not a bad one either. Now, Williams is taller. He's skinnier. That's a pretty good comp. Just from an explosive play perspective. I don't know if he's got the same level of ball skills and contested catch ability, but in terms of his explosiveness after the catch, he's faster though. I'm trying to think, because Williams's breakneck speed reminds you of, or to me reminds me of a Randy Moss or a Dante Hall. Really, to me, like, Williams' best pro comp, in my opinion, is Tyreek Hill. He's like a taller Tyreek Hill, which that should terrify people. Except Williams is a much more polished receiver than Hill. So, I love this. And Detroit is doing something smart. Yeah, Williams tore his ACL in the national championship game. He's going to heal from that. He'll be once the surgery's done, he's going to be fine. These injuries are not career enders. Heck, nowadays you could tear an ACL multiple times and your career's not done. So, I love this pick for the Lions. They now have, or Jared Goff will eventually have a beast of a downfield number 1 receiver. And I'm just saying, the back half of the season, you're looking at a wide receiver room for the Lions that went from last year, everybody's like, ew, to Amon-Ra St. Brown was really good in year 1 as a slot underneath type. He translated immediately. Faster than a lot of slot type players. They brought in DJ Chark on a 1-year mercenary deal, like Chark trying to prove he's worth the long-term deal, that he could stay healthy. Chark's a beast of a player. Like, he's got all the trappings of your number one receiver, or at the very least, a really high-end wide receiver too. And now you've got Jameson Williams. Like, Chark's got speed to burn. Like, he's 6'3.5" with like speed in the 4.3s, and like a really good vertical. Like, Chark's explosive. Like, he could take a screen the distance. I can't rave enough about what the Lions are doing. You're coming away from the first round with Aiden Hutchinson and Jameson Williams. You got two of the 6-7 best players in the class. That moves on to the Eagles, who moved up from 15 to 13. So the Texans got the 13th pick from the Browns in the Deshaun Watson trade. The Texans decided then to trade down. The Eagles wanted to move up ahead of the Ravens. There's a lot of buzz the Ravens would take Jordan Davis at 14. The Eagles really wanted him. They believe they can get his pass rush potential. They can unlock it, and they've developed a ton of great defensive linemen. People can talk whatever they want about, like Derek Barnett, who they did re-sign on a 1-year deal. Being a little bit of a disappointment. Some of that's because of injuries for Barnett, which, he seemed like even at Tennessee he was banged up a decent amount. Like playing through sprained ankles or whatever. But they've done an awesome job developing defensive linemen over the years. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Vinny Curry had a really long career, solid career. They've rehabilitated different players, or at least got more out of guys for brief stretches than other teams. They've turned Montez Sweat into a decent player when he was really raw. I mean, this is the interior defensive line rotation for Philly right now. They've brought back Fletcher Cox, who's one of the best defensive tackles of the last decade. They have Javon Hargrave, who they stole from Pittsburgh a couple years ago in free agency, who is really great. You've got Milton Williams, who they drafted last year out of Louisiana Tech, who is a freak, who has the athleticism to play on the edge too. And then you add Jordan Davis to that, who is a 6'6", 341-pound monster. He is a mountain with 4.78 speed. And they believe they'll get more there's a lot of executives and scouts in the league who said, look, people are overdoing the whole, Jordan Davis even talked about, he could improve his conditioning. He talked about it in the draft process. A lot of scouts, I won't say most, but a lot of scouts and executives are of the opinion that Jordan Davis, the only reason he played 38% of Georgia's snaps last year is because the defense was so loaded. This is how loaded Georgia's defense was in 2020. In 2020, they had Jermaine Johnson as well as all of these guys that are getting drafted this year. And Jalen Carter, who was a freshman, who's going to go like top 10, 15 next year. They had Walker. Walker goes number 1. Devonta White goes in this first round. Quay Walker, spoiler alert, goes in this first round. They had Nakobe Dean at linebacker, which, I mean, I'm using some linebackers here too. But Jermaine Johnson wanted more playing time. So he transferred out of Georgia last year to Florida State and had an awesome year. I mean, they just had so many guys. So Davis will play more snaps at the NFL level. And I love the comp here. Haloti Ngata. People have forgotten about Ngata. This guy is... Ngata should end up in the Hall of Fame. He is one of the best nose tackles ever, and he can play more than nose tackle because the Ravens will move him out to like 5 technique in their 3-4 at times, or play him as a 3 technique in kind of hybrid fronts where they'd shift to 4 down linemen, or a shifted 5-man front. Like Ngata played all over their interior defensive line, and he was extremely quick, he was extremely big, and he was extremely strong. Jordan Davis, athletically speaking, physically speaking, is like Haloti Ngata on steroids. I mean, this guy's as bigger than Vita Vea, and he's way more athletic. Davis has so much potential, and he's a self-aware player. Like, he was honest with teams during the draft process about, feeling like, or saying like, my conditioning could have been better. There are things that I'm trying to do better right now. Because I want to be a better pro. So, I mean, if the Eagles are getting, the second coming or the evolution of Haloti Ngata at defensive tackle, everybody should be terrified. I need to talk about the trade. I'm sorry. Let's see here. So, let's get back down to, there we go. Allergies. Okay, here we are. So, this was the trade down for Houston. The Houston's traded pick 13 to the Eagles for the 15th pick and pick 124 in the 4th round, as well as 2 5th-rounders, 162 and 166. The Eagles arguably had too many picks to fit into their roster, so they kind of needed to move up. I'll say this for the Eagles. To get their guy, this isn't bad. I'd say for the Texans, this is a massive win of a trade just because you're getting 3 selections. The Texans are in full rebuild mode. And having as many cheap, cost-controlled assets as possible is great. Getting 124 and then 2 picks in the 160s to move down just 2 spots, that's a big win. People could say, those are dart throws. Yeah, but the more darts you have to throw, the more chances you have to, hit for points. I think it was a solid trade for both teams. And I'm always a fan of trading down. Unless you just don't get enough value for trading down. So, that moves on to 14 to the Ravens, who actually kept their pick, which is funny. Well, the Ravens always are, it seems like, are trading down. But, which we'll get there because they actually end up trading down in the 1st round. They only came into the draft with 1 first-round pick. We'll get there. Kyle Hamilton, 6'4", 220. 220. I've talked about not being as high on Hamilton as some other people. The Ravens will use him right. They get an upgrade over Chuck Clark as a box safety. My thing is Chuck Clark's good though. I kind of wonder if maybe they should have gone a different direction here. But Matt Miller's comp for Hamilton is Derwin James. And I'm just going to be frank. That's stupid. And here's why. It's not that Hamilton's not good. Doesn't have the potential to be great. Derwin James had 4.4 speed. This guy played outside corner during his career as well. He's got way more fluid hips than Hamilton. He can run with players deep and not get absolutely burnt. Derwin James is a much better all-around prospect. Derwin James was arguably one of the 5 best players in his draft class. Definitely top 10. Early in the draft process, I went with everyone else, and I was like, obviously everybody else is seeing this, so da-da-da-da. There were just some things on tape where I'm like, if you can't do everything, you're not a top 5, top 10 pick at safety. Like, Eric Berry went 5th overall because he started off playing corner and was an awesome corner who then moved to safety. Or should I say, was a really good corner and moved to safety and was awesome. 3-time All-Pro. Berry could do it all. Berry could man cover. He could cover short underneath zones. He was awesome in run support. He could play deep safety. He could play, and he knew how to play run support from whatever role he was playing. Eric Berry in the modern NFL, like if he'd come along, like if his career had started like 5-6 years later, he'd been playing in the slot some too. Or playing in the slot a lot too. Or he'd be playing that strong safety role that does a lot of underneath zone and man coverage. Like Hamilton's not that. I don't want to hear about the tracking data of Hamilton's top speed. You have to put that top speed into context. Hamilton rarely got to that speed. And it took very specific types of plays for him to get to that speed. Like, he doesn't have amazing range on tape most of the time. He's not that kind of athlete. And a team that knows how to scheme him up and use him properly and use him as a linebacker more or as much as they use him as like a strong safety, box safety, they're going to have success. But he is not Derwin James. If you want to compare him to Cam Chancellor, that's cool. But he's not as physical as Cam Chancellor. Now, you play Hamilton in 2 high looks, you're going to be fine. I don't think he can hold up as a free safety because he doesn't have the initial quickness. Well, say initial quickness. I just don't see the initial or as much initial burst as like what you would want from free safeties. He's really intelligent, but I think he's more limited than a lot of people are giving are saying here. Like, he's not Derwin James. And then the Texans drafted Kenyon Green at 15. Some people saw this as a reach, which I think most people expect him to go in the 20s. I did. But Kenyon Green's extremely good. I had Zion Johnson rated ahead of him. But that's fine. What I'm wondering is, do the Texans see him as a tackle? Because he played right tackle at A&M. And I don't think he has the foot quickness to play tackle. If they're going to slot him as a starting guard, though, this is a great pick. Kenyon Green's one of the safest prospects in the draft. The comp is Trey Turner, which Trey Turner at his best was really good. But I'm going to go with a different guy for my comp for him. And that comp is Jahiri Evans of the New Orleans Saints. But Green is a solid pick, and they were at 13 and they really wanted to draft Green, getting those extra picks and just moving down slightly and then taking him, good move. Because, like, if you count that trade down before, like, they got really good value. I mean, this is an instant starter for the Texans. So the Texans come out of the first round with Derek Stingley, Kenyon Green, and 3 extra day 3 selections, early day 3 selections. Like, that's solid. Good job, Nick Caserio. That being said, then you got Washington. So after trading down with the Saints and picking up 3rd and 4th round picks, They draft Jahan Dotson, which I'm not complaining about. I think I like Dotson a lot. Some people had him going or falling into the second round. I knew at least six receivers were going in the first round. And as much as I wanted, spoiler alert, my man Christian Watson didn't go in the first round. I knew at least 6 receivers were going in the first round, and I expected them, all 6 of those guys, to go, and all 6 guys that I expected to get drafted in the first got drafted in the first. And the crazy thing is, 5 of them got picked between 8 and 16. Well, 6 of them got picked between 8 and 18. It was kind of a shock to me, to be honest, that we didn't see a couple more receivers crop up later in the first. But Dotson's awesome. I love his tape. And it was hard for me not to put, like, in my heart of hearts, I like Dotson better than Olave. Dotson's is actually one of my favorite guys in the draft. I had him rated behind Treylon Burks, but there's a part of me that thinks Dotson might be better than Burks. He's definitely a more polished receiver right now, but I think Burks has more upside. And the reason I had Dotson a little lower is because, well, he ran a 4.43 40. He's really slight, like 5'11", 178. But he's a dog of a receiver. I like the Tyler Lockett comp by Matt Miller. Going into the year, I had him comp to Stephon Diggs. And there's still a lot of Dotson's game that reminds me of Stephon Diggs. But I think the Tyler Lockett comp is really stinking on the money. Because really, Lockett is kind of a little bit of a lesser version of a Stephon Diggs, which I remember when Lockett was coming out, he kind of reminded me of Steve Smith, but not quite as physical. And Dotson's kind of in that same vein to me. They're really good contested catch receivers, all of these guys, despite being... Diggs, I think, is 6 foot, but everybody else is under 6 foot. And Dotson's a smooth route runner, and he's tough. He will catch balls when he's getting drilled. Like, he's small, but he is not afraid to go over the middle. And you love that aggressiveness. So, I think Washington got themselves a really nice, another just really nice receiver. I mean, because here's the Washington's receiver room right now. Their top 4 guys are McLaurin, Dotson, Curtis Samuel, and last year's 3rd-round pick, Diami Brown, who's the most physical of those guys. And then they have some guys like Kelvin Harmon, Antonio Gandy Golden, who they had spent day 3 picks on in the past, who are kind of bigger, more physical receivers, not quite as fast, but... And then you've got the Chargers, who stayed home at 17, and they picked Zion Johnson, who is going to immediately start at guard. I was kind of shocked that we didn't see Trevor Penning go here. But, Johnson was my number 15 player on my board. And I think he's an immediate plug-and-play impact starter on the offensive line. So, good job on that. And here's where my sadness began. So the Titans traded A.J. Brown to the Eagles for the 18th and 101st picks in the draft. Yep, I mean, let me double check and make sure I've got that right. All right, so here's the trade. So the Eagles traded picks 18 and 101 to the Titans for A.J. Brown. Because we didn't want to come up from $20 million a year to $25 million a year for AJ. And he probably would have come down a little bit from 25, I think, to stay in Tennessee. Perhaps. Maybe not, but we weren't willing to offer him more than $20 million a year. So, we trade him to the Eagles. And we draft Trayvon Burks at 18, which, hey, that's awesome. I like Burks. You know, guess who Trayvon Burks' comp is for Matt Miller? A.J. Brown. A bigger A.J. Brown is one of the comps I've had for Burks. I've even gone as far as saying he reminds me of Terrell Owens or maybe Brandon Marshall. The thing is, we already had the guy in the building that Trayvon Burks is supposed to become. Although I will say Brown has had a lot of injuries so far, and he's played through them. He played the entirety of 2020 and was a Pro Bowler and had, I think it was 80-something catches for 1,075 yards and 11 touchdowns. I know the yards and touchdowns are correct there. And was a Pro Bowler in 2020. He just got eked over 1,000 yards on, was it 69 catches or 70-something catches in 2019, his rookie year, and had, I think, 7, 8 touchdowns, something like that. And then this past year, he only played 13 games, but he still caught 60-something passes for 860-something yards, and I think it was only 5 touchdowns, but to be fair, our offense there was a lot wrong with our offense this year, from injuries to other things. But I mean, I love getting Burks in the building, but it would have been nicer to have him with Brown than we have been waiting for a guy like A.J. Brown for 20 years. We've never had a number one receiver, a true number one receiver. We've had some really good players or complements of players like Drew Bennett and Desmond Mason. Now, Desmond Mason, he wasn't a big physical guy, but he was a really good receiver for us, and he was great. He was great for us, and then we let him go to the Ravens in free agency, or we traded him, one of the two. And Drew Bennett was great. I really liked him. But other than that, we've been searching for an A.J. Brown since, my entire time as a fan of the Titans, which dates back to their inaugural season as the Titans in 1999 when we went to the Super Bowl. I mean, and we traded him. I get that there are other guys whose contracts are coming up that we're going to have to pay. And I'll say this, receiver is more plentiful than ever. There's never going to be another bad receiver class ever again. They're all going to be awesome because of the rise of 7-on-7 football in high school. These guys are playing more and they're catching more balls than ever. They're running more routes than ever in the developmental phase and doing so in 7-on-7 leagues without having to take a ton of contact. Because that's a non-contact football league. But, man, I'm gonna miss having AJ around. But if Brown hits, it'll be worth it. Or if Burks hits, from a team building standpoint, I get it. So. Oh, and A.J. Brown immediately got a 4-year, $100 million contract from the Eagles with $57 million guaranteed. So he got $25 million a year. And then the Saints got Trevor Penning at 18, which I knew Penning was going to go off the board. One of 3 picks. The Ravens at 14, the Chargers at 17, or the Saints at 18. And the Saints get him, and they're going to develop him into their left tackle of the future. And I love the comp for Penning, Nate Solder. Except, from a size and athleticism perspective, Solder was a big guy coming out. He was taller, because I want to say Solder was like 6'9". But he was at least 6'7". But Penning 6'7", 325. Northern Iowa's putting out some athletes the last couple years. You had 6'8", 315-pound Spencer Brown last year, who I loved, who went, I can't remember if it was late in the third or early, I think it was early fourth, to the Bills. You had Ellerson Smith, who I believe the Giants drafted in the mid-rounds last year. I think he was drafted in the 4th round, who is a beast of an athlete, of an edge rusher. Big and explosive. And then this year, Trevor Penning, who is the reason Brown did not play left tackle at Northern Iowa. Brown played right. And they also have a guy that's going to go later in this draft, Isaiah Weston, who I've talked about. 6'2", he's like 6'2", like 217, 218, 220, somewhere in there. And had like a great combine, 4.42 speed, 20-something reps on the bench press. I think it was like a 40.5-inch vertical or 42-inch vertical, something like that. Crazy broad jump, like Weston's a beast. But I like the Solder comp for Penning. The Saints needed to replace Teron Armstead. And I think they've got a nasty guy. They're going to have to rein in a little bit of that nastiness, but he's got the mentality you want. That's for sure. I like the Nate Solder comp. Another guy that I was thinking about here, oh, dadgummit, I'm blanking on his name. I can't think of him now. I was thinking of him last night when I was reading the recap before I went to bed. My goodness. I mean, he was a mean freaking offensive tackle. Oh, I'll tell you who he reminds me of. Offensive line reminds me of. Dan Deerdorf. That's who he reminds me of. Look up Dan Deerdorf on your spare time. That guy got under people's skin. Oh, no. It's not Deerdorf. I'm sorry. That's wrong. I mean, Deerdorf was a great lineman. No, I think the guy I'm thinking of is Conrad Dobler. I think it was his name. And he's a little dirty. Like, he was a dirty player. But he got the job done. That's Trevor Penning. I'm not saying Penning is necessarily like malicious, but like, I mean, he's physical and he tries to get in people's heads. And then the Steelers stayed home and got the quarterback they wanted. They were like the Patriots last year. By the way, only one quarterback went in round 1, and it wasn't Malik Willis. All this talk about Malik Willis in the draft process came from the media more than teams. Teams, the biggest talk about a lot of these quarterbacks came from teams who were wanting the quarterbacks to go early and often so that players they wanted would be available at their spots. The Steelers stayed home and they picked Kenny Pickett from Pittsburgh. They believed in him. And, you know, the media spun it like, man, now I'd heard that Steelers were really high on Pickett recently, but for a long time it was like, oh, they're all in on Willis. Mike Tomlin's watching Willis's every move. Tomlin watched every move of every quarterback except for Sam Howell on the pro day circuit, and I think the reason the reason he wasn't at Howell's was because that was the day of like the NFL owners meetings where the owners and all the coaches go. And I mean a number of general managers, but like their general manager and their director of college scouting, who's going to take over as their GM, or at least that's what the word is. We're at Howell's Pro Day, but Tomlin watched everyone intently, and they picked Kenny Pickett. And I like the Kirk Cousins comp. That's actually not bad. But Pickett's way more mobile. I'll say this about Pickett. There's a lot of Drew Brees to his game. From a accuracy standpoint and the way he throws the ball and down the field, because doesn't have the most impressive arm strength, but he's solid. There's a lot of Mac Jones to Pickett. Pickett very much has that Joe Burrow, Mac Jones kind of moxie and like I'm gonna hang in here or I'm gonna do what I can to extend the play. Like Jones isn't quite as athletic as Pickett, and honestly, I'd argue Pickett has more juice in his legs than Burrow. But all those guys play above their skill set because, like, I mean, you wouldn't think that Burrow's not the highly physically gifted quarterback just seeing how successful he is, but there's a reason he was like a fringe draft prospect, like a late day 3 guy, and then in one season turned into the number 1 pick. But it's because he has that it thing about him. And I'd argue Kenny Pickett has that too. That's why. And it just took a confluence of things and some opportunity to work really closely with Peyton Manning and some great trainers, and that extra year he was able to stay in college, and he had an awesome season, and he's going to stay in the same stadium. Like, he doesn't have to change anything. I think this is a great fit, and he's going to battle Mitch Trubisky to start this year. I really like the pick. And they didn't have to trade up and do anything to get him. So then we moved to 21. So the Patriots traded down from 21. The Chiefs moved up, which was not a shock. A lot of people expect the Chiefs to be really aggressive because they had like the most picks or tied for the most picks in the draft after the Tyreek Hill trade. I think they had like 12. They don't have that many spots on their roster for players. So they trade up and they get Trent McDuffie. And we'll get into McDuffie here in a second. So here's the trade for the Chiefs and the Patriots. So the Chiefs move up 8 slots from 29 to 21. So they trade 29. They trade their 3rd round pick, pick 94, and 4th round pick, 121, to the Patriots. And to be honest, this is a great deal, in my opinion, to move up 8 spots in the 1st round. Like, these are back of the 3rd round, back of the 4th round picks to go up and get a guy who I had going at 12 to the Vikings for a while. And McDuffie was the 16th rated player by Scouts Inc. And I like Miller's comp for him, Chris Harris Jr. Chris Harris was a elite slot corner who could also play outside. There's some people, Brett Coleman, who believes McDuffie could be an awesome safety and be kind of like Budda Baker. I love this for the Chiefs because they might see that too, and they might see him as the kind of guy who can play that Tyrann Mathieu role. I think he can play any spot. I think he can play outside corner just fine. He's great in run support. He's physical. He's got good athleticism, good tools. I think the Chris Harris comp's really high praise. I think that's not a bad one. Yeah. I'll say I thought he had a lot of skills, kind of like former University of Washington teammate Byron Murphy, who plays like a slot, and he plays some outside corner too, but he plays a multi-positional role for the Arizona Cardinals. So Chiefs really needed a corner after losing Charvarius Ward. They got him. So then the Packers at 22. So the top 6 receivers are off the board. And I saw people like Colin Cowherd had or a tweet last night. So the the Packers needed a wide receiver, and they did and I responded to it on Twitter. I'm like, they picked two really good, two really great defensive players. Quay Walker is a physical linebacker. His first step's not as quick as like you would expect from his 4.5 140 time, but he's got good range. He's smart. He's a great blitzer. He can play some edge for you too. He's 6'4", 241. Let's see. Oh, there's not a comp here. That's interesting. As a one-year starter, he's still very raw. Yeah, but he had a role on the defense before this year. Which they've had a really deep linebacker room. Walker's a solid tackler, and he's solid in zone coverage. He really improved in zone coverage this year. He's not the best. He's not going to be like one of those man backers, but you've got Devondre Campbell who can do that a little bit better. So I'm fine with that pick. I mean, I had Quay Walker going in the second round, but I think Walker's a solid choice. My thing is, Devin, and here's where I will criticize them a little. So I like the player just fine. I'm not as high on Quay Walker as other people. Because see here, Scout Seek had him 31. I didn't have him. I had him like further down. I'm not shocked he went first round from the stuff I was hearing. I say hearing, stuff I was listening to on podcasts, reading. Devin Lloyd's the better player. Devin Lloyd was on the board. Channing Tindall's in my opinion, has a higher upside. I have a feeling Nakobe Dean's just going to be really good and is a safer pick than Walker, although he might not have fit what the Packers wanted as well as Walker. Personally, I like Chad Muma better than Quay Walker. I like Trey Anderson's upside better than Quay Walker. So, to me, the Packers should have picked the best player who's been on the board for a while at this point, and that's Jermaine Johnson. Yeah, they've got Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary, but it would have been nice to have Johnson in case they can't re-sign Gary. And it's just nice to have that many awesome edge rushers anyway. Plus, that would allow them in, like, nickel sets to, move Gary in to defensive tackle and rush from the inside some. But, I mean, it's not a terrible pick, but I'm going to give the Packers benefit of the doubt because we all thought Eric Stokes was a reach last year, and that ended up being a home run. So, people criticize the Packers all the time. They draft extremely well. They just don't draft the players the media wants them to. That was a little toxic. But I mean, for real, it's kind of like the media has these expectations for things, or, they're right. It's like, you know what? There is some truth to the argument, like, well, why aren't you in the league then? Why aren't you making decisions then? That's not true about everyone, because also Daniel Jeremiah was a scout for a long time. I respect him immensely. I respect McShay immensely. I kind of move back and forth on Kiper. Kiper's got a lot of experience, but, some of his takes on players, it's like, well, you talk about, he's been really critical of Tim Tebow. It's like, yeah, the whole media circus thing is because of you. It's not because of Tebow. Tebow doesn't necessitate you saying anything about him. If you don't like the circus around him, don't build the tent, because you're the one building the tent. You are the circus. You're the distraction. It's not Tebow. The problem was all the media, the people who run the media organizations know that Tebow drove traffic. They know that actual people. Well, he's polarizing. There were people that hated Tebow because he's a Christian. But most fans loved him, even if they didn't think he was the best player, or a lot of us didn't think he was going to work out as an NFL quarterback. We still loved him as people, and these media people would just trash him. Anyway, I'm going to get off that high horse. So here's a pick that I did have in my mock yesterday. Which I had Penning going to the Saints. I just had him going at 16 and not 18. Or I think I had him. Or did I end up having him get to the Chargers? Man, I can't even remember my own mock from yesterday. But I know I had this one. So I had Curriculum to the Bills. However, I had him going at their original spot at 25. So here's how the Bills got that pick. So, two things happened. One, before we even got near this pick, before the Titans-Eagles trade happened, Arizona traded the number 23 pick and the number 100 pick in the 4th round for Marquise Brown, who's coming off his best season as a pro. Arguably. Definitely, I think his most receiving yards. 91 catches for 1,008 yards and 6 touchdowns. Which that yards per catch rate is kind of crap, but they ran a lot of screens and underneath stuff with him. And there was a period of the season where, Lamar Jackson was out and Tyler Huntley was the quarterback. Brown's got incredible speed. Marquise Brown has, elite speed. And he played with Kyler Murray in college. They got drafted the same year, 2019. Murray apparently, and this is true, Murray sent a text to General Manager Steve Keim after when the news broke, apparently a bunch of fireball emojis. You want to talk about engendering goodwill with your quarterback who you were kind of at odds with earlier in the offseason. Or there was some, some unhappiness, or there's another word I'm looking for and I can't put my finger on what I'm wanting here. But this wide receiver room for Arizona. DeAndre Hopkins going to be back healthy. Then I just want to talk about the speed in this receiver room. Rondale Moore was great as a rookie, which wasn't a shock to me. Rondale Moore, like 4.29 speed. He fast and shifty and gadgety. They already had former second-round pick, or another former second-round pick from 2019, actually. He went ahead of DK Metcalf and, also Terry McLaurin. Andy Isabella, who ran, I think it was like a fourth or somewhere in the low 4.3s out of UMass. And now you add Marquise Brown, who's got, I don't think he ran a 40 at the combine, because I think he was coming back from like a foot injury, like a Liz Frank or something, or he was dealing with some kind of injury, I think. But I mean, Marquise Brown has like that top end, like low 4.3, like 4 into 4.2s type of speed. That's Marquise Brown. The speed in that receiver room, my gosh. Like, you're going to be able to run Hopkins and one of Brown, Moore, or, I mean, the thing is, they could have 3 guys on the field with, if we're going to put in Madden terms, like 96, 97 plus overall speed on the field with DeAndre Hopkins. And I'm just imagining like these clear out concepts. There's this 4 wide play that I've loved in. Well, and you could do this with a tight end on the field too. But there's this play concept that I've loved for a long time, and it's got a dagger concept on the left side. You've got you have your X receiver running a dig route, like maybe could be 10, but usually like a 12, 13, 15 yard in route. You've got your slot receiver running a go up the. Sometimes you can see him run it up the seam, but I like the concepts where it kind of fades to the outside. You have like either your tight end or your other slot receiver running a deep post route, and then you have your Z receiver on the opposite side running, a go ball down the sideline or the opposite sideline, and then you can have your running back. Sometimes people will do this out of like a pistol set or a ace or a single back alignment with the quarterback under center. You can also do it out of the shotgun, but where you run like a play action into it as well, and then the running back leaks out of the backfield, or has the option to either stand in block if it's needed, or leak out underneath for a check down. That play with those 3 speed demons and Hopkins running the dig, how the heck do you cover that? I tell you who everybody's going to be wanting to run on Madden this freaking fall. I mean, my gosh. Between Murray's mobility and arm and all those weapons at receiver, golly, Bill, I'm like... So anyway, the reason we even got onto this, so that trade happened. So that's how the Ravens get back in the second round to do their, totally on brand first round trade down. So then, move up here. So Baltimore gets number 3, and they trade down to 25. So Buffalo moves up, which I honestly don't understand why Buffalo thought they needed to move up unless they had intel that the Cowboys were going to potentially draft Elam, or that some other team was trying to move up for Elam or a corner in general. So the Ravens move down. They trade 23 to the Bills. The Bills trade the 25th pick and pick number 130 at the end of the 4th round, which a 4th-round pick to move down 2 spots in the back end of the 1st round. Like, that's just classic Baltimore right there. And they do as good a job as anybody of hitting rounds 3, 4, 5. So, and that leads the Bills to drafting Kaiir Elam, who I'm a huge fan of. 6'2", 191. Like, strong physical corner. He's got really great top end speed. If I was going to compare him to somebody in the league right now, or at least a fairly recent player, man, because you got to sort through so many players, especially at cornerback. There's just been so many corners. Because you got so many of these tall corners these days. Like, you know, he's like another faster Richard Sherman type, but I don't think his... Man, I'm having a tough time thinking of who I would compare Elam to, because I don't want to give him the Sherman comp, because that's definitely Gardner. I'll tell you who. Aqib Talib. Physical. The one thing that hurts that comp is Talib or Elam will get like a really good press at the line, and then he'll let them create a little bit of separation and cushion in the route. Like, he'll give a little bit of space after that, after getting him offline. And I think it's because Elam's trying to bait the quarterback a little bit. But Talib, the athleticism, length, and style of play, I think, and I like Elam a lot for the Bills' defense, because the Bills like to play a lot of quarters. They like to play a lot of too high. And I think Elam, with his tools, and he's still growing, like, he has a lot of potential, because he has a lot of real good length to sit down and play a little further underneath of routes when he's playing in shorter zone coverage. And he's got the length and athleticism to give a little more space to receivers, because he can get to the ball. Or to a number of like balls that most corners in the league won't be able to. And he's got, because of his speed and his length, he's got a lot more room for error than other corners. And for a taller corner, his hips are pretty fluid too. He still needs to improve his technique, but Elam's got extreme upside. Which, to me, this is a draft full of extreme upside players. That's just how, the amount of athleticism and the length in this corner class. There's so many tall, long corners, it's ridiculous. So I love that for the Bills. To me, that was clearly the biggest need for the Bills. The other is speed and explosiveness at running back, and I think they could improve, they could improve the interior line positions like guard, I think, and interior defensive line depth. And linebacker, but for them it's depth and safety potentially, because Jordan Poyer's wanting a new contract, and he's a couple years on the wrong side of 30, so they're not being swift about it. So they do need a developmental safety, but this is a deep safety class. They can get that later. So then the Cowboys do what I expected them to do all along. There was a lot of talk that they were going to trade up for pass rusher. They wanted pass rusher. Jermaine Johnson was on the board here. They had like a home run pass rusher if that was, but they had been talking. A lot of people thought that they were going to be going pass rusher because they've been talking so much about how much they believe in Dorrance Armstrong that people thought that was a smokescreen. Well, the Cowboys took an offensive lineman like I thought all along, and they took Tyler Smith, guard tackle out of Tulsa. He played tackle in college. I think he's really raw still. He needs to start off at guard, and I think they'll do that here, like they did with Lyle Collins. He's 6'5", 324. He's really athletic, but his technique needs a lot of work. And that's okay, because he's young, and from all accounts, he's really coachable. And the Cowboys have done, and the Cowboys organization is awesome at developing offensive linemen. They are simply among the best organizations when it comes to developing offensive line talent. To me, Smith couldn't. This is one of the best situations Smith could have gone to. And if I was going to compare him to anybody, it would be Lyle Collins. He's not quite. I would say this. Collins had just an insane amount of upside. He just had some off-field stuff. And like personal issues that he got, that ended up not being a big deal necessarily once he got to the pros. Like, I think he did have like I can't remember if it was a steroid. It was like a supplement issue that got him suspended, or for a few games one year. But Collins off the field has been fine. Smith, from what I've been able to gather, doesn't have any of those concerns. And I think Collins is a good comp because of the career path and the development that was needed for him to eventually make it to tackle. And he'll get to learn from one of the best left tackles of the last decade. Well, decade plus. Tyron Smith. Tyron Smith's going to teach Tyler Smith how to, be a proper Smith in a Cowboys uniform. Oh, that was dumb. But I like the pick for the Cowboys. And then the Ravens, arguably the biggest need for them was improvement along the offensive line. And a second, upside pass rusher, which they can get. And here's the thing with the Ravens, they do such a good job of finding, at the very least, solid pass rushers, rounds 3, 4, that, since they hit on Odafe Oweh, they probably feel good about that. Heck, even round 5. They've developed guys before from that range. So, getting Tyler Linderbaum at 25, I really wish they had maybe gone with Jermaine Johnson at 14 instead of Kyle Hamilton, or Trevor Penning at 14 instead of Kyle Hamilton. But Linderbaum can come in and be a day one starter at center. And the comp here is Jason Kelce. That's really high praise. Except I think he's faster and more agile than Kelce. I might have really, to me, I'd compare Linderbaum maybe more to Alex Mack or I'm going to go even further back. One of the best centers in league history, one of the best centers I've ever seen. And that's Olin Kreutz, who played for Chicago. But Kelce, is one of the best centers ever as well. I think this is great. Linderbaum was my number 16 prospect. Getting him at 25 is really good value. And the fact that it's a position you need an immediate starter. Awesome. So then we get to the Titans' original first-round pick. And we decided to trade down. And the Jets got Jermaine Johnson. And I'm just going to be completely frank. Even though we didn't necessarily need edge rusher, I wish we had just taken Jermaine Johnson because he was my number 2 edge rusher on the board. I believe my final prospect rankings were Neal, Hutchinson, Ekwonu, Cross, and then Johnson. Or did I have Gardner ahead of him? I think it was Johnson at 5. I think it was Gardner at 6 and Williams at 7. Like, this guy was my 5th ranked prospect, or 5th or 6th ranked prospect. And he got to 26. Like, gosh. So, anyway. So, here's the trade. So, we talk about, like, I love trading down. But you got to think of value. So, we traded from 26 down to 35. We traded down 9 spots. We also sent our, or that 101st pick for pick 69 and a 5th round pick. So we jumped up from the 101 spot in the 4th round. It's either the last pick of the 3rd. I think it's a 4th rounder. Because when we in the Philly, like the trade for it, it's listed as a 4th rounder at 101. Up here, it's listed as a 3rd rounder at 101. So either way, we moved up 32 selections there, which that's a nice big jump. That's great. And we added a 5th rounder, but man, I wish we could have gotten a little bit more for that trade down. But we still added an extra pick, extra cross-controlled asset, and really moved up in the draft, or later in the draft. And we're still in a really good spot for getting talent at the top of the next round, especially considering some of the choices that come after this that I'm like, okay, I had them rated lower than like where our next pick is, so that's good. So, and I think for what the Jets get here, this is the thing for me. The Jets are able to get a top 5, top 10 prospect, and all they had to do was move down 32 spots from early in round 3 to the end of round 3 or the very beginning of round 4, and a 5th round pick to move up 9 spots and get that guy. The Jets won the draft, I'd argue, just from that alone. And here's the thing, they hit their 3 biggest needs. And if you're looking at it based on my rankings, they got 3 of the 11 best players in this draft. By my board. So for me, Joe Douglas, massive win. I've been telling people I really respect Joe Douglas. Forget, like, him getting stuck with Adam Gase at coach. I don't think he was the guy who hired him. I think Joe Douglas came in and then Gase, or the owner, hired Adam Gase. The Jets, they come out of, this is just incredible. And they come away with guys who, they come away with my number 1 corner, my number 2 wide receiver, and my number 2 edge rusher. And I love the comp here of Marcus Davenport. The thing is, he is more developed than Marcus Davenport was when he came out. But that's how twitched up, powerful Johnson is. Marcus Davenport's a great comp. And I mean, he's 6'5", 254. He had a 4.58 40. He had like a 1.59 or 1.6 10-yard split, which is great. His explosiveness, like, he had a crazy good broad jump. I think it was like 10-foot 7-inch broad jump. No, I love that pick. I'll tell you who else he reminds me of. He's like to me, he's like a little bit taller DeMarcus Ware. Like, his aggression, his motor, and physicality, and in the run game as well as rushing the passer. Jermaine Johnson's a great edge defender in the run game too. Huge fan of that. I think the Jets did really well. And then the Jaguars traded up for the 27th pick, so we'll look over at that trade as well. And this was the last trade of draft day. So Tampa Bay trades down. They move down 8 spots. Wait a second. Did they? Yeah, they got one of these second round picks messed up. Because we got the 35th pick from the Jets. I believe the Jaguars' second round pick is the 33rd selection. Because for some reason they got... I mean, because they have the first pick of the second round. Yeah. So the Tampa Bay actually traded down only 6 picks to 33. They got number 106 outright and a 6th round pick, 180, for their trade down. For 27. And the Jags select Devin Lloyd, and considering they signed a big free agent linebacker and then cut Miles Jack afterward, getting Devin Lloyd in here is awesome. Scouts Inc. had him rated the 20th overall player. Lloyd's really good. He's my number 1 linebacker, and he was the second off-ball linebacker drafted. 6'3", 237. He's got great pass rush skills. He had 15.5 career sacks. 7 of them last season, which, like, he could play some edge. The Darius Leonard comp is perfect. That's, I mean, outstanding. And he's a little bit taller and longer than Leonard. Well, he's taller. Leonard has really long arms. Lloyd can do everything. So can Leonard. But I would say Lloyd's actually better than Leonard in coverage. And I think, Lloyd's instincts are just phenomenal. The Jaguars' front 7, between adding Walker and Lloyd, I think this is a really good 2 picks for them. And it didn't cost them much to move up. You traded a 4th round pick and a 6th round pick to move up 6 spots to get a guy who's going to start from you from day one. Like, really solid. And then the Packers, who didn't want to reach on a receiver, they drafted Scouts Inc.'s 23rd overall player at 28. He was my 13th overall player. 6'3", 304-pound Devonta White out of Georgia. White is a menace. They've got him comped to Christian Wilkins, and that's fine. Christian Wilkins, he struggled early in his time in Miami. He's become really good. I I actually think Wyatt is a lot more like Fletcher Cox, personally. Like, an even more twitched up Fletcher Cox. Yeah, that's my comp. Wyatt's a beast. Because Wilkins, like, I want to say he had like a 5'1", 240, like, athleticism-wise and just meanness-wise, Wyatt's a way meaner player. If anything, Wyatt reminds me a lot of Quinnen Williams. He just didn't play nose nearly as often as Williams played it in college. Another Wyatt comp would be Jonathan Allen out of Alabama. The Packers, like, once again, their front seven. And this spot on the interior line, their third starting spot on the interior line was a spot I thought they could upgrade. And they did it. So, people can say whatever they want about receivers. This is a deep receiver draft, and Aaron Rodgers, and they've done so good of drafting receivers in the second round. And right now, going into the second round, George Pickens is still on the board. Christian Watson is still on the board. Scott Moore is still on the board. Alec Pierce is still on the board. John Mechie is on the board. Like, there are all kind of receivers still on the board. The Packers the Packers organization knows what they're doing. They've been drafting like this for years. That's why the Packers have been successful for as long as they've been. So then we have the Patriots. After that trade down I talked about earlier with the Chiefs, they drafted arguably, what's definitely the biggest reach of the first round, and that's Cole Strange. Now, when I say reach, it's based on what perceived value was and what we believed, or where we believed people would go. I really like Cole Strange as a prospect. He's a smaller school guy. He's an interior lineman, and they needed interior. Like, this was the Patriots, to me, other than receiver, this was their biggest need. And I did not want them drafting receiver in the first round. And I think linebacker and corner are things they need to address. But they've done a great job of addressing corner later in the draft anyway. They're amazing at finding corners. And they're really good at finding linebackers, too, all over the board. Of course, I had Devin Lloyd mocked to them at 21. But Cole Strange is going to be a plug-and-play starter. He looked great at the Senior Bowl despite being an FCS prospect out of Chattanooga. He was Scouts Inc. 77th ranked player. But he was the third best interior lineman they had graded. So after Kenyon Green and Zion Johnson, this was the third-rated guard on the board. Those guys both went top 20 when a lot of people had them going like the back end of the 20s. Well, actually, they went at 15 and 17, Green and Johnson. So, which I had Strange going in the second round. Although he was not number 3 for me at the position. I had Strange going in the second round. I had him going either the back half of the second round to somewhere in the first half of or like by the middle of the third round. I thought he was going to go like top 75. So, I mean, this is a reach, but they reached for a starter. And good or a lot of teams have done this in the past, like the Cowboys. They drafted Travis Frederick at the very end of the first round. And a lot of people, yeah, Frederick's going to start day one, and we think he's going to be awesome, but, like, you could have gotten him in the third round. Like, there's some positional value, whatever. I don't care. Like, they got a starter. Yeah, it's not going to get an A grade, but I'm not going to just dunk on that pick. And then the Chiefs, with their second first-round pick, they draft George Karlaftis. and he ends up being the 5th edge off the board, which I thought more edges were going to go. I thought Ebiketie and Mafe were going to sneak in. I thought some more receivers could go. To be honest, more offensive linemen went in the first than I expected by at least one. Actually, my last mock draft, I don't think I had Tyler Linderbaum go in the first round. So I think I only had 6 guys, 6 offensive linemen go in the first round. But, I mean, sometimes the board just falls differently. I didn't have Quay Walker going in my first round either. So, but Karlaftis goes to the Chiefs, and he kind of fits the mold that they like. Steve Spagnuolo likes bigger, stronger defensive ends, guys like Justin Tuck in New Orleans, like because they've kind of had a New Orleans style. Guys like Breland Speaks who didn't work out. Tano Kasugarian, I can't pronounce his last name, but Tano was drafted by the Chiefs. Was on the Chiefs. He got picked up by the Saints last year. Karlaftis fits that mold. People talked about him having short arms. He actually has pretty decent arm length. Like his arm length's fine. 6'4", 266, explosive first step. The Trey Hendrickson comp is spot on. I believe. I'm not as high as Karlaftis on Karlaftis as some other people. Now he had dropped for Scouts Inc. Like they had him 37th. But this is the range I thought he would go in. Like I thought he could go as high as 24 to the Cowboys. Some people had him in the teens. Like some people really high on Karlaftis. I was not. Like I have Ebiketie and Mafe ahead of him in my grades, but Karlaftis is a good player. And the Chiefs needed an edge. And they come away with a starting corner and a starting edge or a high upside edge player. That's exactly what Chiefs fans wanted. Well, I think some wanted a receiver, but once again, they brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They have Mecole Hardman. And this is a deep receiver class and deep in the kind of receivers that they like. There's a lot of speed at receiver in this class. And they've got plenty of picks, even after that trade up. So, and then I love the Bengals going after Dax Hill. If they can't come to terms on a contract they like with Jesse Bates in the next 2 years, because they can franchise him again next year, Hill could eventually replace him. Hill can swap off either safety spot with Bates, who can do it all as well. Hill can also play corner. And based on his athletic profile, it wouldn't shock me if the Bengals ended up playing him at corner. And he had rose up the boards a lot recently. I mean, obviously, Scouts Inc. had him at 18. I had Hill going higher than this. I had him going to the Saints in my mock, I believe, if I remember correctly. But I love this pick for the Bengals. This is a really strong value pick. And the comp is perfect. Eric freaking Berry. Yep, Miller's comp for him is awesome. I would totally agree, because he is that safety he is that DB who can do everything. No, Eric Berry is a great comp. And to be honest, Dax Hill is a player I wouldn't have been shocked if the Chiefs had drafted either. But I think the Chiefs are targeting Jalen Petrie down the board, or a Jaquan Brisker maybe in the second round. We'll see what happens. And then the Vikings, after trading down to 32, they draft Louis Cine, who ends up in the first round, which I did not have Cine go in the first. I thought he was going to go by the midway point of the second round, or at least top 50. 41st ranked pick player by Scouts Inc. Cine's super fast. if I was going to rank, or if I was going to rate him as or since they don't have a comp here, I'm going to come up with one on my own. And for me, Sine's long, he's fast, he's a great tackler. His tools remind me of, and he's a little bit taller, but Kevin Beard of the Titans. He's like a longer, faster version of him in some regards. But I don't think that's a perfect comp. What? I'm trying to think back a ways here. Cassine hits hard. Sometimes, though, he lets, because he's flying so fast and he triggers really fast. I think his reaction skills and coverage could be better, but I think to some degree in college, he was asked to play really deep and just not let things behind him. So I think he was asked to play more conservatively than he would naturally at Georgia. I think he can improve and be even better in the pros. But Sine has deep coverage ability. He's got the ability to go up with receivers with his speed and athleticism, and run stride for stride from them downfield and get his hands on the ball. He's really great at coming downhill from too high and single high looks, reacting quickly to the run or to screens and making plays. I'm a big fan of him as a single high guy. Dagummit, I'm trying to remember this guy's name. I have like I can picture the guy. Like he had great height, speed, combo, length. Dude, I'm racking my mind here and I cannot remember who I'm thinking of. But I'll say this. I'll tell you from a skill set standpoint, this isn't the guy that I'm thinking of, but Marcus Williams, I think, is a pretty good comp for Louis Sine. Rangy, just a really good rangy free safety. He got paid by the Ravens this offseason, so that's a pretty good comp. So some takeaways. I think Minnesota trading down, getting a guy who will eventually replace Harrison Smith, and what he allows them to do is they kind of, as with Harrison Smith getting a little older, allows them to have really good too high coverage, allows them to play Smith more in the box and in a intermediate and underneath coverage role as he ages, and he gives them great range over the top, which will help out their corners. After that trade down, and they got really good value out of that trade down, because they're going to be drafting they've got a pick 34 tonight, so they got the second pick of the second round. They added the second pick of the third round. The Vikings need bodies right now. They've had to do a lot of stuff or they've had to let some guys go that they would have probably liked to keep because of cap purposes. And they're also kind of rebuilding parts of the roster. Like, they're really having to rebuild the defense. This is a great pick for the future. I have no problems with that pick. Because some people say, oh, that guy was ranked 40 overall and you drafted him 32. Or that guy was like 50 overall and you drafted him at at the end of the first round. Guys have ranges, and different teams Just because some media guy has Lewis Cine ranked 41st overall doesn't mean that he's the 41st best player in a draft. Because there's also stuff involved with positional value. Like, 10 years ago, Breece Hall would have been a top 10 pick. He doesn't even go in the first round this year because of positional value. To me, Hall and Walker easily would have been top 10 picks in the 2000s. And like I said, even the early, maybe, and even mid 2010s probably. That's just not how it goes now. Your top running backs, Derrick Henry, second round pick. Jonathan Taylor, second round pick. DeAndre Swift, second round pick. Dalvin Cook, second round pick. Alvin Kamara, third round pick. Nick Chubb was a early second round pick. Kareem Hunt was a third round pick. I mean, you just keep going. Yeah, there are guys who go in the first. The thing is, it's not just about the hit, it's how much you're paying them relative to the position. You draft a running back in the top 10. Now, there have been some bigger contracts recently, like Christian McCaffrey has kind of bumped that up. Of course, Ezekiel Elliott. And Derrick Henry's contract, although Derrick Henry's is pretty reasonable. Like, those guys have gotten paid, but when, like a few years ago, when Saquon Barkley got drafted number 2 overall, he was already, like, in the top 10 and maybe was like the 7th or 8th highest paid running back in the NFL. While you had teams who during that time have drafted guys in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Heck, James Robinson, undrafted. Sorry, got allergies, my nose itching. I know I keep doing that. James Robinson went undrafted. And as an undrafted rookie, had over 1,000 rushing yards, several hundred receiving yards. I think finished like running back 7 in fantasy that year. He was unfreaking drafted. You look at guys like Raheem Mostert, Elijah Mitchell, Matt Breida, Jeff Wilson, who have, were late round picks to undrafted guys in San Francisco who have been super effective when they've been able to get carries. Which all of them usually got the job because someone ahead of them got injured or whatever. It just doesn't make sense to draft a running back in the first round from a positional value perspective. Yes, there are hits. You can look at every position. There's hits further down the board. At running back, because of the fungibility, the amount of injuries, it's just better to get multiple of those guys because the replacement level ability around the league, if you're good at identifying guys that fit your scheme, is really high. Now, if you're not good at getting the right guys, or if you get guys who are injured all the time, like the Titans drafting Darrington Evans, and signing a guy like Dion Lewis, who's wasn't a number 1 back and in my opinion, didn't really fit our offensive scheme that well. And was more of a third down guy, and he didn't even do well at that. Like, if the Patriots are willing to let a running back go, you probably just ought to not touch him. Darrington Evans is already gone after, being hurt pretty much all of his first 2 seasons in the league. But we did a really good job last year of finding, we picked up Dante Foreman, and he did a pretty good impression of Henry and got signed by the Panthers to be their third running back. I kind of wish we had brought him back. We brought in Dontrell Hilliard. I'm hoping we'll draft a Ty Chandler or even a Damian Pierce, just one of the many. I think this is a really deep running back class this year. So I hope we take one later. But I'll say this. The big winners, easily the Jets. The Jaguars come away with two top, or I think 2 starters. The Eagles, I think, manipulated the draft really well. They come away with A.J. Brown. They've got 2 number 1 receivers over there now. They also get Jordan Davis. That was high upside. Or who's just a high upside pick. The Saints come away with Olave and Penning from this draft. Those are the 2 guys they wanted. And that's what I've been hearing. Those are the 2 guys they wanted. They got them. I think the Lions coming away with Hutchinson and Williams is just incredible. And the fact that they were able to trade up 20 spots, and in my opinion, they didn't give up. Like, to me, they didn't give up a ton to get there. I think the Vikings got decent value. But, like, I didn't think they got... It's not necessarily great value. But, like, I don't hate the trade for the Vikings. I love the trade for the Lions. I said the Jets won. I think the Giants did really well. They came out with their two biggest needs. They got an edge rusher. They got a starting offensive tackle. I think the Seahawks are elated to walk away with Charles Cross. The Panthers were smart and drafted Ike Ekwonu. Like, I'm super proud of them for not reaching for a quarterback that was going to get destroyed this year. Because the Panthers have no picks. And no one wanted to trade up with the Panthers, which kind of sucks. I really think they were trying to trade down to get more picks in this draft. I don't think Matt Rule is going to survive the season, though. The GM might not either. We'll see. And then I think Houston did really well. You came away with a starting corner, and you got a starting offensive lineman in Kenyon Green. And the way the board fell, I'm going to expect with their second round pick, they're going to be able to get Arnold Ebiketie or Boye Mafe. Probably. If that's what they want. If that's what they're wanting to draft, one of those guys. Or maybe they go for another receiver, or like to add to their receiver room and draft a guy like. I mean, they've got Nico Collins, who's kind of a bigger physical receiver, but I don't think he's as good as like a George Pickens, or he definitely doesn't have the high upside of a, or at near as high upside as like Christian Watson. They could go for a guy like Sky Moore. Like, Texans are in a really good spot. The Chargers investing in their offensive line was smart. But if we're talking about, and I think the Washington Redskins trading down and getting the Washington Commanders trading down and getting picks and getting Jahan Dotson at 16. I think that was a good move. All in all, I'll say this, and I think the Chiefs manipulated the board. Pittsburgh's a winner just for staying put and getting the quarterback they wanted. Because they drafted the only quarterback in the first round. So that was the guy they wanted. So they pulled the Patriots of last year. And I think the Chiefs coming away with McDuffie after a trade up and getting Karlaftis, I like it. And I'm going to say this. The Packers won just for sticking it to the media and drafting the way they draft. Because with all those guys off the board, I get not reach. The thing is, they reached on a linebacker at 22. So that's the one knock I'll give. But I love getting Devonta White. All in all, I think most of the teams in the league should be happy with what happened on draft night. The one team I will say maybe not is the Titans, because it, as a fan, it sucks to lose AJ. Like, the fan base is, we're not happy, and I saw it on Twitter. But from a value standpoint, I get it. I do. I'm just not. it's gonna take some getting. It's gonna take some getting over for me, not having him around. So we're gonna preview the second round real quick, and then I'm going to call it a morning. Wow, I've been going for almost 3 hours now, so sorry about that. So we're gonna talk about best available. Nakobe Dean, Scouts Inc.'s 19th overall player. I'm not shocked he fell out of the first round because of measurables and stuff, but I like their comp of Roquan Smith. He might not be quite as athletic as Roquan. He's super quick though, and I'd say he's smarter, coming out. So I expect him to go fairly soon or fairly early. Malik Willis is still on the board. Andrew Booth ended up falling out of the first round because of not having workouts, is what I'm going to say, recovering from an injury. Booth's going to be really good. My number 4 corner, Zion McCollum, is still on the board. And he might be on the board till the third round, but Zion McCollum's still on the board. Christian Watson, who had moved up a bunch during this process, the 39 overall player by the end of it for Scouts Inc., he's still on the board. Arnold Ebiketie is still on the board. David Ajabo, Kyler Gordon, Boye Mafe, I mentioned him. Breece Hall. Sky Moore is still on the board. Let's keep going down. Just some notable guys. It's going to be really interesting kind of seeing who ends up going. Bernard Raymond is the top offensive lineman, still on the board. So let's look at round 2. Just kind of preview the beginning of round 2 here. So the Buccaneers are starting off round 2. They've got the first pick of the round. They could go a number of ways. To be honest, I was kind of shocked that they traded down and didn't take Devonta White at 27 because I thought that was a clear great fit. I think they ought to take another edge for depth purposes. And I think Ebiketie, I've seen a lot of comparisons to Shaq Barrett for Ebiketie. I think he'd be a good fit. Mafe would be a really good fit because I think physically speaking, he's a lot like Joe Tron and Jason Pierre-Paul. Like an inch shorter than Paul, like 11 pounds lighter, but very similar physical builds and play styles. If they don't go there, it might be a corner. Andrew Booth would definitely be in play here. The Vikings, with the 34th pick, once again, Andrew Booth, to me, fits. I think Zion McCollum would be awesome in Minnesota. I'll just say that. And he fits their GM's profile. Their GM loves speed and guys who he tends, when he was with the Browns and part of their front office, the Browns have done a lot of drafting where a lot of their picks line up with RAS scoring. And I just feel like McCollum would kind of fit his mold. For the Titans, who will be taking they'll have the third pick in the round. I want us to draft another receiver. Since we traded A.J. Brown, could maybe we draft another just high upside physical guy in like Christian Watson? Like, please? I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be okay with Dylan Parham or Bernard Raymond. Or Bernard Raymond. But we might be able to get, at the very least, Parham maybe with our other, or do we have another pick in the second round? Actually, I don't think we do. Let's see here. No, we don't, because the Falcons have that pick. So, my thing is, there are interior linemen further down the board. I'd love to see us draft another receiver. I'd be okay with us targeting a tackle type player like a Bernard Raymond. I'd be okay with us trading down again as well. And low key, I mean, I like our defensive line, but Travis Jones would be a upgrade at nose tackle. He would improve our defense. I could see us. I've heard a lot about linebacker. You know, if we took Nakobe Dean, I wouldn't be mad. If we took Shannington, if we took any of like the second round graded linebackers, but I wouldn't mind trading down again, to be honest, from this spot. Even if it was only a few picks, just to get some more picks down the board. Because I think we need some more cheap lotto tickets, to be honest. So, some interesting teams in the second round. Of course, you've got the Texans, who have the 5th selection of the round. The Seahawks have back-to-back selections at 40 and 41. Don't be shocked to see them move around. The Bears have 2 picks in the second round. The Falcons have 2 picks in the second round. The Browns have their first pick of the draft at 44. Let's see here. Kind of looking at to see like kind of who owns the most picks in the round. Yeah, like I said, the Bears have 2 picks in the second. The Buccaneers, of course, pick at the top of the round, and they pick towards the end of the round. The Niners' first pick comes at pick 61 in the second round. The Chiefs have 2 picks in this round. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Chiefs move up from their second rounder. I am right that they've got 2, right? I thought I saw them further up here. Yeah, because they pick at 50 and 62. It wouldn't shock me to see them move up from one of those for guys that they really like. And for teams to watch just for quarterbacks, one, I'll say this. And don't be shocked to see the Bears move if they think they need to get a receiver or what they want. Most Bears fans are wanting to see like a receiver or offensive lineman and then a trade down. I think most people, I know EJ and Brett Coleman are wanting to see like them get their hands on George Pickens at their first pick and then trade down with their other pick and get more picks because they need them for this rebuild. But if we're talking quarterbacks, now the Buccaneers could be a sneaky quarterback team, but you'd think they'd have taken one to get the 5th-year option in the first round, but we'll see. I mean, they have Trask, and they've said they like Trask, but we shall see. It'd be interesting to see if the Giants targeted a second-round quarterback, considering they're going to decline Daniel Jones's 5th-year option. The Seahawks could target a quarterback in the second round. That wouldn't shock me at all. Someone to compete with Drew Lock, but really maybe sit and develop a year. The Falcons, and I've heard talk about the Colts. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Colts are either going to try and draft a receiver, or I think they're a team that could absolutely draft Raymond. The Bears could draft Raymond. The Jets could, because they didn't draft an offensive lineman or offensive tackle in the first round. The Texans drafted Kenyon Green, but I think most people project him as a guard. he couldn't hold up. He really didn't hold up amazingly well at tackle and pass protection at the SEC level. But so I could see the Texans going with Raymond here in the second. Same with the Titans. So we'll see there, but I don't think Raymond's going to last to pick 50. The Falcons could go quarterback for sure. They've got Mariota, but drafting a developmental quarterback would be interesting. I could see Arthur Smith. If the Titans apparently are pretty high on Desmond Ridder, which that could be a pick for us at the top of the second round. It wouldn't shock me necessarily. But I think he'd be a really good fit in Indy or Atlanta. And I think the Browns, I'm kind of expecting the Browns to either go wide receiver or edge with their pick. The Lions haven't drafted a quarterback either. Wouldn't be shocked to see them take one at 46. The Saints could take a second-round quarterback. The Steelers, have a feeling the Steelers are going to go offensive line with their second-round pick. Of course, the Packers have 2 second-round picks. Forgot about them. It wouldn't shock me if both of those picks were receivers. Or a receiver and a tight end. They're very high on Jelani Woods. And I would watch out for the Patriots targeting Leo Chanel out of Wisconsin. Let's see. And then just because it's their first pick, I think for the 49ers, the biggest need for the 49ers, or the 2 biggest needs, it wouldn't shock me to see him draft a receiver with what's going on with Debo. But I think what you're going to see is probably an offensive lineman at that spot. Maybe a developmental tackle. So at this late, I don't think Raymond's going to be gone. Abraham Lucas could be gone. If so, they run a zone scheme. They're going to want a more athletic tackle. Like Raymond and Lucas could both do that. But I feel like they want someone with more run blocking experience than what Lucas has. So I even if he's on the board, he probably wouldn't be their guy. Kellen Deesh out of Arizona State would be a guy to watch here. Let me think a couple of the other guys here. Because I don't have them all or everyone in front of me. Oh, and the Broncos' first pick comes at the very end of the round as well. So we'll talk about those 2 picks real quick, and then I'm going to get out of here and eat something. Let's see. Let's go to offensive tackle for... So Raymond's on the board. Lucas. I've talked about I'm not that high on Nicholas Petit-Ferrer. Luke Godeke. Luke Godeke has risen late in the process, and he'd be an awesome fit for the Niners scheme. Their run scheme. And the Broncos are also running that same offense, but I don't expect them to go offensive tackle necessarily. Daniel Fa'alele is on the board. He's fallen. He's more of a power guy, though, so I don't see him fitting really good in that their kind of wide zone scheme. He didn't have the foot speed. Rashad Walker out of Penn State could be a guy there. Like I said, I mentioned Kellen Deesh. I don't know why Max Mitchell is this low for Scouts Inc. He's definitely... Because I haven't rated much higher than this. Mitchell would be a great fit in San Fran. And if they didn't want to go offensive tackle and they wanted to go interior line...
their highest rated guy is Sean Ryan. They are really low on the interior guys. And maybe it's because of positional value, but they've got Ryan rated ahead of guys that I definitely have. Zach Tom is a guy who screams Niners. He can play literally all 5 spots. And he's got great movement skills. He's one of the most athletic offensive linemen, just period, that I've ever seen. So he'd be a fit. Dylan Parham of Memphis, of course, he was my number 3 interior lineman, number 4 interior lineman behind the 3 guys who went in the first round: Linderbaum, Johnson, and Green. I didn't list them in the order I have them in because I have Johnson, Linderbaum, Green, but Parham is, for me, clearly one of the top 50 players in the draft. See. Yeah, there's no one else down here that I'd really kind of throw at them in the second round. Maybe Darian Kennard, but I don't know if he really fits their scheme. If they don't go offensive line, I think the Niners, probably their biggest need then would be... Oh, yeah, here are the centers. Cameron Jurgens would be another guy who's really athletic, who the 49ers could target on the interior, play center or guard. I could see them going defensive tackle at the very end of the round. That would be probably Perrion Winfrey, Fidarian Mathis, or they still have DeMarvin Leal, I guess, as a defensive end, is what I'm guessing, because I would have expected to see him by now. Let's see here. There's Ebiketie. Oh, Logan Hall as kind of a... He's like a defensive end, defensive tackle. To me, he's more of a defensive tackle, but it depends. But there's Leal, their 59th overall guy. I mean, he's 6'4", 283. He's kind of a penetrating guy at defensive tackle. Uwuzurike here, they've got him as a defensive end. I think he fits kind of the mold that they like of their interior defensive tackles, like big, like tall, long. He's built a lot like Javon Kinlaw, who they drafted in 2020. So, yeah. And then I could see corner or safety for them, too. Like, they could draft a defensive back. For the Broncos, I actually think inside linebacker is a big need for them. I think a lot of these guys are going to be off the board. Some guys I think who could still be on the board: Chad Muma, I think would fit great. I feel like Tyndall will be off the board by then because of his physical tools. Troy Anderson, because he was at a smaller school, and they've got him ranked 92 overall. I've got him higher. And I think just everybody right now has got Brandon Smith rated too low. So with that being said, that's the show for this morning. I will be on tonight. I will be streaming rounds 2 and 3 of the draft. I think that starts at 6. Actually, let me check that. Real quick before I end the show. Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave that up and add another one. So 7 p.m. Yeah, 6 p.m. Central. So I will be live at 6 p.m. tonight. We're going to have a good time. I'll be reacting to things in real time. I might try and configure it to where maybe I can have some buddies on if they know how to use Discord. One of the two. But I will be on. And then, depending on how things going, I might have the draft up in one place. Oh, I missed some chats. So sorry I got caught up down the stretch. Hopefully Willis to Seattle. Hey, if Willis goes to Seattle, I think that'd be a good fit. They know how to use mobile quarterbacks. I like their offensive coordinator too, and those weapons. I think Wilson was just tired of the organization as it was, but I think Willis would be a great fit. And thanks for, yeah, I'm sad that AJ's gone. Lose a guy over economics. I mean, but that's the business, man. It is economics, and there's a salary cap, unfortunately. I'm sure, like, if you're a Seattle fan, like, dude, I remember when, I mean, he was a lot older at the point, but I remember when we moved on from Steve McNair, when the Titans moved on from Steve McNair, like, that dude was my childhood hero. Like, I was heartbroken. I mean, I was excited to get Vince Young, don't get me wrong, which that didn't work out, but I don't blame VY, I blame Jeff Fisher. Dude, I can't imagine Seahawks fans losing Russ and Bobby in, like, the span of, like, what was that, 2 days? Dude, like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know how that feels. So thanks for tuning in. I will be live tonight, and I'll be paying more attention to chat because I probably won't have stuff up on screen as much because I'll be watching the draft on my iPad probably. Although I might during the stream, I might move the draft to like my TV or whatever and or pull up Rampage on. I watch pro wrestling, so me and a buddy actually are planning on starting a podcast soon. We're working on titles right now for it, but I'm a huge AEW fan. I'm started watching WWE again. Hopefully, you know, I don't hate myself as much as I did when I left watching WWE. So, thank y'all for tuning in. I appreciate y'all, and I hope y'all have a great Friday afternoon. I hope you're back here at 6 p.m. because we're definitely gonna be talking draft. Hopefully,